All right, so thank you everyone, and welcome to this week on Relationships and ROI, where our goal is to help you strengthen, build, and nurture your relationships with your ideal audience so you can have positive ROI in your business. We're your hosts. I'm Jessica Phillips with Now Marketing Group and Relationship Marketing System. We provide social media and internet marketing services to help you build long-lasting relationships with your ideal audience. And my lovely other co-hosts are Mike Gingrich and Ravi Shulk. Ravi is a social media and online customer service expert. He loves to help businesses online effectively manage their customers using social media. He's also the founder of the Secrets of 5-Star Service. It's an online membership site to help you and business owners boost their customer loyalty and sales. And Mike Gingrich is president of website agency Digital Hill and also the co-founder of Tabsite and a nonprofit I Give Global, where he lives by the philosophy always being uncommon and always adding value. So welcome, everyone. Today we're diving into, is it time to break up and how to handle a bad partnership? Yeah. So I've actually went through this recently, so it's actually kind of good timing on this topic, but I'm going to let all of us kind of dive in and talk about this. So first of all, not every relationship, we've talked about this in previous blabs, but we try to find our ideal audience, right? Like with every business, you try to find that ideal customer that you can serve. And you go through this process and you build relationships with them. But just like any relationship, some of them may not last or they may not be right for each other. So you may have to consider, is it time to break up or should you refer them on to someone else or not? So let's talk through what that looks like and what that process would be like, I guess, to go through that. Because as a business owner, sometimes you feel like you have to take on everyone, but that's not the case. So first of all, have you guys ever went through this?
I've had difficult clients where it was more about communication being misinterpreted rather than having to actually break up. I guess that's one of the reasons you break up with a client. It could either be communication, it could be what they believe in terms of what they wanted to get out of the agreement. And by miscommunication, I mean that they're not clear on what you offer. So their expectations are either too high on what they want, and obviously demands then increase. But I've dealt with difficult clients, definitely. And I think one thing that I didn't do when I first started out, managing social media clients and even talking to businesses was set a clear guideline, which obviously I do now and I did moving forward. But when I first started, I was like, we do social media management as an example, and we'll be happy to, manage a process for you. But if you don't be a little bit more strict and controlled in how you're going to do it and what the end result should be, then they might turn around and say, we want 10,000 likes by next Friday. And because you're not clear, the relationship then gets more difficult, and then that leads to something where you may need to consider the breakup situation if it gets to the point where both sides aren't clear and it's obviously not an effective or mutually beneficial to both parties.
Yes.
Yeah, I've absolutely been down that road, and I think, Ravi, you're right. So expectations are huge, and I think it's been an interesting learning experience over the course of time in business that sometimes those who are wanting to sign the fastest for your services are the ones that can be the most dangerous. And I say that because, I've sat down with someone and you're trying to make sure they understand some details. You're trying to set those parameters as you talked about, and they're like, okay, yeah. Let's get moving. Where do I sign for this, e-commerce website? And now that's like a red flag. It's just like, hey, because too fast is, and then what happens is they didn't really listen, they didn't really hear, they didn't really even read what you outlined. They had their own agenda. So when there's had to be breakups, I think it's because, yes, there was two clear different agendas, what we outlined and what they wanted and what they expected. And so then it's not valuable. I mean, it's because, if they come back and say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? It's like, well, yes, but those weren't included in this piece. So those would be different. It's a different cost structure, whatever that is. And that's a bad way to go. So do you need to do it? I think yes. It's going to be best if you can try to avoid that by doing the work ahead of time. And, and it's weird just because you don't want to be even so eager for the sale that you say yes when you shouldn't.
That's a good point that both of you guys bring up. Okay, one, we've been through this too. When we first started, it was, here's what we provide and great to meet you and learning a lot about the customer, but then writing this from the discovery questionnaire, writing their proposal, and then having another meeting where we dive in deeper to their needs that take a little bit longer. But at that point, we're already kind of partnered together. So we've actually broken this up now into two pieces because we'll do the discovery questionnaire, one, to make sure that they're a good fit. Then we make like a tentative, here's what we think we could do to help you, but it's not a signed agreement yet until after we have that in-person kind of sit down discovery session with them and really outline the plan. So now we're charging for more of that outlined plan, and they get the plan whether they go with us or not. But we now are having that pause period in between so that doesn't happen. But where we ran into, I guess, the other issue with this is that we don't have all the decision makers at the table. So what was clear to one person that was sitting and meeting with me and going through this process, and we outlined this plan, the business owner is kind of leaving it up to maybe someone else that's their role, and they're saying, yes, you make the decisions and it sounds really great to them, and we formulate this partnership. But then a couple months down the road, then the business owner maybe is getting in on the table, and kind of like what you said, Ravi, I was expecting maybe 10,000 likes by this time, or I was expecting you to hit everything because we're paying for maybe one service from you. You should provide all the services because we're in a retainer agreement with you. So I've learned to make sure that all the decision makers are at the table when this is being outlined, and that those expectations are clear, because that's where we ran into issues. We had, one person that it was all good, but the other chief wasn't in on the plan that was signed up on, and it came to an issue then later.
Yeah.
So
that's the segue, the coming in later kind of piece there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the step one is definitely making sure that there's clear expectations from the get-go, and that there's definitely all the decision makers at the table, right? And taking our time. The next thing,
I think it's even more critical, if I can just add a little piece there, and that is, it's important because, particularly with social, just because within businesses, social media can be misunderstood in the same office. Yep. And so having that, the key players at the table so they can understand it is critical, because we've seen that before too, where, we're working with a marketing person and they're all for that type of thing. But then, it jumps up to a VP saying, well, what is that? Why is this out there? Yeah. And, why was this done? And this is just a picture, that type of thing. And you're okay, then, part of the strategy, this is what it means. This is how you get engagement, what engagement means on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah. And our list of what we will not provide now is included. And it's just as long as the things that we are providing, but we're clearly outlining like what we are not providing. So if we're saying we're doing a website, an e-commerce website, we're clearly listing in there, this does not include product photography or photo retouching, if it doesn't include that. So we're making sure that, yes, we're doing this for you, but we are not providing these services. However, we can make some recommendations for you. We've learned to make sure that list is in there as well. So there's no confusion when you're setting up that agreement.
Yeah.
And making sure that's signed off on. So then the next thing then, though, we found that some clients, they're slower to trust, or they're used to working with someone where, they're kind of heading up the charge for whatever service that they're hiring out for, which is great. It's good to have that feedback back and forth. But if you don't have trust in a partnership, especially if you're hiring out for something that that you would want help in, then it's just a bad sign. Like, they have to be able to trust you and you guys meet each other in the middle where they have goals and they're hiring you to help you reach them. But listening to the advice that's coming back and forth. If there's no trust there or a foundation of trust, it does not work.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, transparency is a big one, because a lot of the time when you take on new clients on social media, you often find that you've promised something and maybe you've not realized that you're unable to deliver it. Like in the website instance, you might have said, we'll design the banners, but you maybe weren't specific on what you'll actually included. And then I think it's important to say to them afterwards that you're unable to provide this service, or this will be additional charge, or more importantly, admit to a mistake you may have made when you made the original agreement. Now, we're not lawyers here to say you're breaking any terms, but what we talked about in the beginning about setting expectations, a contract is a good way to avoid sticky situations, especially when ending client relationships. There can be situations where finances come into it, where they're not willing to pay for something because it wasn't promised. So if you have a contract from a legal point, that's something you both need to agree on and sign, which has things like payment dates and duties and what's billable, etc. So if you can set that up first, then you're going to be on your way to a lot smoother ride and less, hassle admin wise, and also the relationship will be intact because you've both got this document to refer to.
Yes. And just like if there's other things, so you brought up a good point. Maybe you're doing the banners, okay, and this banner is leading to a sign up for an email. Well, you need to be clear, though, in what you're providing. This goes back to point one, but this is like drilling down this point that if you're providing the email setup, but you're not providing the software. So that's another charge. And if, they grow outside of those email subscriptions, or maybe you're running a Facebook contest, but you're not purchasing that Facebook contest platform. So making sure that that's all outlined in that contract, and that there's reasonable demands with that. Like you said, like we've had with the same client that I'm referencing, this is recent, that where the chief comes back in later and he says, you know what, I want X number of sales. We've spent this money on marketing, and thinking that marketing is sales, and setting those, I want it by this date. So making sure that there's that trust there, one, to know that you are doing what's in their best interest, but then also that marketing is not sales, or that, what is included with that, and what is your role, and where you guys align and meet together. So you bring the business to the door, but then once they're at the door, it's the job to sell after.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
What's another one?
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think we've got quite a few people jumping on, and I think it's also because cleverly the way we've worded this blab sounds like it's an actual relationship we're talking about. It is actually, I guess, offline and online. Similarly, you deal with relationships, because it's people we're talking about. But also on that note, I will say that there are times when it's okay to fire a client, although they're the ones with the money and they're the ones that are going to give you business. I think if they don't agree with your values and what you're about and how you like to conduct business, then I don't think you should be afraid to kind of cut the cord as well. So we talk about losing them, but at the same time, we need to be the ones that somehow
freeing though. It is so freeing. I'm telling you, like if you ever go through that where you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, and I love all of our clients, and I love doing this, and I definitely, give everything multiple opportunities. And I do think relationships have to be built and trust needs to be established. But if you're constantly being met with unrealistic demands, and they're demeaning or talking down to you or making you feel like your ideas and your partnership is not valued, I tell you, there's a time where you just say, you know what, we are not a good fit for each other. We respect your business. We wish you all the best, but I think you may do better with someone else that you're going to have maybe a better rapport with, or somebody that you can grow from. And it's okay to fire a client. It is okay to do that. And I was, thinking in my head, like, does this mean I'm giving up? Does this mean that I'm did something wrong? Does this mean that I've not, handled things the way that I should? But in all reality, it was a way of just saying, we're just simply not a good fit for each other. And it's okay to do that. And I promise you, if you ever get to that point where you're questioning it, you're probably best off to maybe just do it. And I felt like this is the only time I've ever had to do this, where I felt like a weight was lifted off of my shoulders.
Sure. Well, because by that time you've kind of come down to the conclusion that it's not within that ideal client mix, that there's a spectrum of the potential clients, and you're trying to narrow down what you work best with, and that's that fit, and you're seeing that, oh, this one's outside of that, and that's off the screen, right? So that it doesn't fit, and and then that is freeing, just because it didn't flow. There has to be a flow. You want to take those steps. You want to try to work at. You want to try to work at communication, and you want to try to find a way. But definitely, I think that there can be times. How do you handle bad partnership? So, I guess I'm interested more, Jessica, maybe in your story there on the handling of that. So you determine it's not good. You are breaking it up. You are ending that client relationship. How is that handled?
Sure. And I want to touch on it before I answer that question. And I was saying that working for free, we had clients that was in the same wheelhouse with the same client I'm talking about. They're like, hey, if you don't meet these number of sales, we're basically not paying you, or, not communicating with you and sending you those goals. That's another reason, though, when it's okay to fire someone. If they're not, conversing with you and letting you clearly know their goals, and they're holding kind of their payment as ransom, unless you deliver on these unrealistic goals, is definitely a reason to say we have to cut our ties. So what I did, first, I'm a firm believer in prayer, so I prayed about it and made sure that I was not, thinking about this in a wrong way, because I was being met with, some opposition. I wanted to make sure that it was definitely a smart move, and that I have done everything in my power to make it work. So after I did that, then I literally just wrote a letter out to get my thoughts out first, of, here's our reasons why. I was very professional with it, but then just let them know that, based on our business model and our values, we want to work as an extension of our clients and to help them to achieve the maximum, level of success. However, we felt like, without, accurately being able to have a good conversation ongoing with realistic goals where we could meet face to face with all the decision makers, we didn't feel like we were going to be able to provide the best service possible. So we would like to, send them their items, and we made some other referrals to them, or we told them we'd be happy to make referrals to other people that we thought that they may work best with, and be happy to do an introduction. And I did try to do an in-person meeting with this, to talk to them, face to face. Not everybody can do that if you live outside that area, but I did write it down in case I wasn't able to, and then just send it as a letter. So.
Yep. No, I think what was key there was that you even added some value, tried to show some relationship equity just by trying to make a connection for them, to offer to refer them on. I mean, so that's a way of, trying to finish well.
Right.
I think that's
exactly. You don't want to damage the business reputation. I think that's key too, is that you don't want to say, I'm sorry, we're not doing this anymore, and just kind of leave it at that. You definitely don't want to burn bridges. You want to be respectful, because you don't know where they're coming from. Maybe they worked with some bad people in the past, and that's just the way that they've kind of put their defense up and their guard up in order to protect themselves. You don't know where they're coming from. So I didn't know where they were coming from with that. But you definitely know that, you do want to leave on good terms, but you are allowed to say that you don't have to stick it out with them.
Yep. Yep. And it kind of comes back to our topic here. And when we say that every week we want to talk about relationships and ROI, there has to be, you're trying to seek some mutual ROI in that with a good relationship. That's the relationships and ROI. Right. So it's going to work best when you have the, some common ground, clear expectation. There's a collaborative synergy between both parties. And then when it's laid out clearly and you can execute together, then that can lead to a great ROI. But when some of those pieces are broken out, then ultimately from a business standpoint, you have to make that judgment call to say, this either isn't working relationally, it's not working ROI wise, or it's not working both of those. And, that helps determine how you need to move forward with your business, with your company.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think also just want to add, we've had Gail in the comments who actually, just as Jessica was talking about that situation with the client, she actually chimed in with the very same thing. So after asking her why she fired the client, she said because they didn't value what she was adding to the business and essentially wanted her to work for free. So I think having that value in place for yourself to know that as a professional, we're providing these services, and anything outside that scope is obviously should be billed. But if they're demanding extra work for the same price, then that's something you need to explain to them as an ongoing relationship, that it's going to cost more to implement that as a service because it needs more skills, more time, and more resources. And if they're not happy with that fit, then you can only offer them what they've kind of paid for. So I think that's also very important. And as a result, then Gail's actually fired 2 clients here because of that very reason.
Already.
And also, like she mentioned, they wanted to obviously, when they keep demanding more work and not expecting to pay for it, then obviously that becomes a relationship that you need to consider either finding a solution or then maybe speaking to them to see if it is actually a good fit after all, and whether you do want to end the process.
And it may not always be something like that. It may even be when it's time to break up. If they're asking for services that you're not comfortable delivering on, maybe it's just not your forte or your skill set. We've had that where we've went through that, like I said, that first discovery process with a client, made sure that they were a good fit client-wise. But then when you really dived into the nitty-gritty of the scope, they wanted this internal intranet build, which was not really in our wheelhouse. We're always willing to learn and grow, but it wasn't in our wheelhouse, where we said, you know what? We want you to have the best success with this this process, and we want you to succeed. So it's really not in our skill set. So it's okay to refer on, and we sent them information on to another person that could handle that request. So it's okay to do those things as well. I mean, the key here is making sure that no matter what, that you feel good about the relationship and what you feel that you can offer value to someone, and that it's a mutually beneficial relationship no matter what. So the paying thing is definitely going to hinder your relationship if they're not willing to pay for or listen to your services, definitely. But making sure that you keep that good relationship no matter what. Because that could
absolutely, yeah. And I think that, again, we've covered this, but I think just to point out again, you want to do that carefully. I mean, and you want to make sure that you've taken the steps along the way to try to, build that rapport, to make this a win-win, a successful relationship. So, how has your communication been? And have you reached out? Have you tried to, be proactive in getting that time to talk about the issues, to revisit the agreement that was in writing that you have? Have you tried to break pieces down into small bits so that you can have some documentation of what you're doing or what the issues are, or because you don't want to just dump this on someone. I mean, that's not being fair in a relationship as well, in a business relationship. So it should be, I think it should be fairly clear to both parties along the way, because of the track record of communication that you have tried to offer, to make it work. So it shouldn't be clear, because it should be clear that it was coming because of the pieces, the communication mechanisms that you put in place, and the questions you were asking, the attempts to communicate, the attempts to outline, the discussion points that you wanted to go over.
Yeah, and you hit on a good piece, though. It's not leaving them hanging. Like, even if you do decide it's time to break up, there's still going to be a transition period. So you need to offer to serve them through that and to make sure that you can help them alongside finding someone else, especially if you're in the middle of a project or, it's a service that, that they're going to need, to upheld, during that transition period. Think of it just like if you're leaving a place of employment. Essentially, if you're working for someone and you're working with them, it's just kind of like that. It's like providing your notice, but you're not going to just no call, no show and go on about your business. You're going to make sure that you're giving them a notice, you're giving them time to find someone else, and that you're helping them out along the way while you're making that transition to make sure that you're keeping that good relationship intact.
Yep. And I know we had the question here. That Martha was asking just about contracts and the again, that's number one in starting that relationship. That you should have that a contract outline. These are the services we are providing. As Jessica said, it's even good to say, what this does not include. So those are some of those pieces. I think you should have some type of template that you want to use. And I think that it's always good in your country of origin to have a lawyer to review that and to ensure that you're not missing any key pieces in that, so that you could kind of that it's kind of a one-time thing, so you can use that contract going forward because you know the pieces. So you can find those templates online, you customize those, you can present them to your attorney to ensure that it's meeting what needs to be done in your area, and then you're kind of good to go, I think.
Especially with the non-pay stuff, and Robbie, go ahead. But the non-pay stuff, you definitely want to make sure you have an attorney write that over, because if it needs to go to court, you need to file. There's filing fees. It's like $500. Most attorneys are going to charge for a piece of whatever they're trying to collect. So you definitely, your proposal is one thing, but your terms of your payment terms and your overall contract, especially if you have a contract in place, you definitely want to make sure that you get a legal advice from an attorney that looks that over and makes sure that that's going to cover your losses in that sense. Or
I'd like to address Martha's point here as well about front loading a heap of work. And so that comes back to your point, Jessica, you just said, which is terms. And I think that, terms are significant. And you want to, find out a way that's going to be workable for you. It's a good faith gesture to require something up front. You're not going to be there. You're not going to get 100% up front many times in big projects or that type of thing. But, can you get 30% down to start the project? There should be some type of piece that makes you feel comfortable and shows, their willingness for you to get started. And then if that 30% is going to be cover you for a time period, that you can kind of see how that communication goes along that way. But I think always in terms, it's a good faith gesture to require something up front.
Yeah, I'd just say, obviously, legally, the reason it's so important is because we're not obviously experts in this specific field. So if certain queries come up, such as, costs or anything that's going to affect the relationship from a financial point of view, then obviously it needs to be looked over. But from a personal point of view, what you can do as a business owner in terms of, as we're on the subject of terms, is state what is in your scope of work. So this is what we're providing, and this is how the work is going to be laid out. So whether that's either the type of work, whether it's community management here on social media, whether it's a web design template, whether it's backing up their software. And also I'd probably add in what actually comes as an additional as well. So this is what's not included, but this is how much it costs. And I think lastly, the most important one, which is a reason that affects the client relationship, is the length of contract. Some of these are retainers, which means they're ongoing. So you need to make sure the client understands that the contract does not end unless they give notice, like Jessica said. Also, if it's a set amount of time, like a 3, 6, or 12-month contract, you need to let them know what happens at the end of that, end of that period. Is it auto renewal? Do you give them 30 days notice? Do they get a chance to have a discount? If they know what happens at the end, then it's less scarier for you as a business owner when you have to turn around and say, am I going to get this customer again for another 12 months or 6 months? If you can actually have in the contract that this is what happens, then it just helps us set expectations towards the end as well. So I think that's a good thing to point out.
Yeah, we send a client welcome pack. We say, welcome to the family, and outline again their terms, all the frequently asked questions, and then everything that they would need to go back and reference when they sign on. So they have it there, because it's all so exciting when you're signing up and you're getting this need met. But when it does come down, like Mike, you said, when you're going into this project and you're like, wait a minute, I thought that was provided. You want to make sure that they do have something to kind of go back to. So it's clear that you can see that you were very transparent in what you were providing, and you're very transparent and what you're offering ongoing, and that there's no gimmicks or anything there. It's all outlined, because I don't think most people try to go in it thinking, oh, I'm just going to try to get that for free later. It's usually just they're excited in the moment, and they're hearing the bits and pieces that they're wanting to pull out and that they're excited about. And there's those other things that they'll have to go back and reference. So.
Yeah, I think just quickly, we're talking about the customers, but as business owners, we can often get too excited as well. So we might be on the phone and have these big plans for the client, but we need to make sure we rein it in and think to ourselves, is what I'm saying going to match what we're offering in the contract? Because if you verbally agree to something without crossing that legal border, obviously, but if you're verbally saying to them, we're going to create your website banner with photography and it'll be a great project, and then in the contract you say it'll cost extra, that's something that's going to give you problems, obviously, in the future. So even as business owners, make sure you rein it in and say, we'll have to double check in the contract as well. So this is something that you need to, we need to make sure we double check before we move forward with any plans.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was a really good point. I know I do that. I get excited about the project. I have to luckily we record our discovery questionnaires, but I get excited too about different projects. I think we all do, and you do what you love, and you just get really excited. Yeah. You're like, let's do it. Whatever it's going to take, let's do it. But all right. Well, we said we would keep this at 30 minutes. We do want to open it up for any questions at this time, if you have any additional questions. But just to kind of regroup, Mike, if you want to leave everyone with one point, just to sum this up, and then also put your contact information in the message after you're done, and then we'll go to you, Ravi, and put your message in the chat box there so people can get in touch with you. We'll wrap it up.
Yeah. All right. Now I'm going to say that my final point to reiterate is the need to go the distance and to make sure you've worked at it. It shouldn't be a surprise if you're going to have to end a bad partnership. You should have a communication trail, a clearly documented outline of what you have done. And honestly, I think that you need to have that trail that you could produce if need be. So I like to use digital means. Email, those types of pieces, because if I just leave a voicemail, I can't, that's might be gone. I'm not recording that voicemail myself, kind of thing. So communicate, outline the pieces, try to work at it, try to be intentional about that. It shouldn't come as a surprise.
Yeah, I think I'd say my key takeaway from our discussion is manage expectations, but create an outline for those expectations. So it's great to have new ideas. They're obviously welcome from the client perspective, and as a business, you're going to be hired for your knowledge. So there's nothing wrong with having new scope of work, but make sure what you've agreed is in your contract. Anything additional, you let them know that this will come at an extra cost, whether it's your time or whether it's your services.
It's good. And I think my last word of advice, I guess, from this or recap of this is just listen to your gut. You're in it to provide value. And if you feel like you've reached that point where it's not joyful for you anymore, it's not joyful work, you feel like you're not able to provide that value that's within you, and the client's not happy, or you're not happy and enjoying your work, you do have that right to stand up for yourself and to offer them maybe a better solution where everyone can be happier at the end of the day. But listen to your gut and, make sure that the work that you're continuing to do is joyful and that you're feeling satisfied from this work and that you're always providing value. That would be my last, I think, piece of advice from this.
Excellent. Anybody else out there that still has any questions? Martha was still there. Gail, anybody else? Final questions. Allison.
Else.
Don't see any new questions scrolling up. So I think those
All
are
right.
kind of, we've covered kind of the key grounds as well. So just on the end of that, obviously we've had Martha jump in with her questions, but just for those new people that have tuned in, this is a weekly blab. We're here the same time every single week. So first of all, make sure you hover over our names here and tick the follow buttons to make sure you're connected with all of us. And Jessica's also shared the link for next week's blab, so you can find that in the comments as well. So it's going to be a weekly bag. It's not always going to be about this particular topic. So stay tuned as we're going to discuss different areas to do with relationships and ROI.
That's right.
All right.
Next
One good
week,
question
right away.
there
Oh,
from Martha, and that is, Martha, we are three separate businesses. We just collaborate together. So we have found a commonality online. So we're in different countries, so got the UK, got the United States represented, different states in the US, and we collaborate. Ireland here. All right, good.
Very cool. Yeah,
Awesome.
Even though I'm wearing Michigan colors, I'm really from Ohio. Ohio State. Yes, I put the link to find us next week. Creative ways to get noticed and show you care next week on Tuesday here at 2 p.m. Eastern time, and also a way to get in touch with me as well. So we hope to connect with you guys again. Thank you so much for joining us today on this topic, and we hope you guys have a great week of building great relationships and ROI for your business. See you next week.
All right,
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Next week, guys.